The Royals are 2-4 since the last time we talked, but absolutely nobody is overreacting. Let's talk about why everything is on fire and what they can do to put it out.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into another episode of the One Royal Way podcast here on Kansas City Sports Network. Jordan Foote here, Joel Penfield, Josh Keiser, brought to you by Emprise Bank. Eternally grateful for their support, our partners in Possible, and my partners in Possible here on the show. We'll start with Joshua. What's up, man?
We're live. It's a live edition of the One Royal Way podcast. So very excited to be going on with the Royals game that is actively happening right now, instead of us telling them a day after that it's all happened. So very excited to be here live with everybody. Joel, good friend, how are you?
I am surviving, and I think that's about all we can do at this point, right? That's just how most days go, and I think some of this is just being in the trenches with two kids. It is starting to wear a little bit. I won't lie. So I'm glad to have this at the end of the night. Both kids are in bed. I get to have a little bit of time talking with my pals, talking about baseball. Nice little outlet.
100%. Excited to jump into this podcast because I think we have equal parts good things to talk about, not so great things to talk about. What's real, what's not. That's going to be a theme, I think, over the next few weeks. That's something that Josh used in our group chat earlier on Tuesday. So the Royals, again, 2-4 since last time we spoke. They had a doubleheader against the White Sox on Wednesday. 1-1, lost the second game. Beat Baltimore 9-4, lost to Baltimore 7-9. Lost to the Orioles again, then lost to Toronto. So on a little bit of a skid here, a little bit of a losing streak, if you like to call it that. I don't think anyone prefers to use that term, but in progress right now against the White Sox. Good grief, not the White Sox. They're living rent-free in my head. The Toronto Blue Jays, they're down 1-0 to them. If they played the White Sox every day, they wouldn't have a 3-game losing streak. Not easy going for the Royals lately, guys. Any quick, immediate thoughts in terms of standout performances, things from the game that caught your eye? We'll start with Joel, I guess. Anything kind of jump out to you?
So I think two things can be true at once when we look at this past week for the Royals. Like, yes, they are not playing well right now. Like, it's pretty up and down. They've had a great game on Friday and then a couple duds, since then. But I also think on the other side of that, if you told me at this point in the season, at this juncture, that the Royals would be 13-10, I think you take that 10 times out of 10, right? Like, I think that's where we're at right now. And some of this is water finding its level. The starting pitching has started to come back to the mean a little bit. It's not bad by any means, but it's starting to come back from the elite level that they were at the first couple of weeks. The hitting has been, hit or miss, no pun intended, just kind of feast or famine right now. And they're still hitting the crap out of the ball, and they're still putting together solid at-bats. The results just aren't matching with that, and that's some of the issue right now. I don't think that is a long-term concern. I don't have any long-term concerns about the offense right now. They're just in a little bit of a lull, and it's just a matter of time before they bounce out of it. So not a ton of like overarching thoughts other than they're not playing well, but they're still kind of exceeding my expectation of where they are right now, given the schedule they're playing.
Yeah, and it's damn tough schedule, and it's only going to get more so from here. But I was kind of looking back on all the games, and there's only been like maybe 3 or 4 games where you're just like, well, the team just doesn't have it today. They've been in positions where 1 or 2 plays go their way, and we're talking about a different outcome in a lot of those situations. So I do think that the starting pitching especially is kind of overachieving. They're not, I wouldn't say they're that good. But that is also being counterbalanced by the fact the offense is incredibly unlucky. They're doing a lot of good things, a lot better things than they were the last couple of years when we thought that there was some potential in this lineup. So I think things will start to even out on both sides at some point. I just hope that it gets to the point where they're evening out at the same time, and we're not both down here while we're all up here, and then we start winning games like 10-1 again and all that stuff. So I think the water is going to find its level on all facets at some point, and we just got to ride it out until then.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. And it's a long season, and everyone says that. Yes, it's cliche, but it's true. I did some work. I had a radio thing Monday, so these stats changed a little bit after Monday night. But since the 12th, when they began the Mets series, the Royals were 27th in WRC+, but They ranked 23rd in starting rotation ERA and 14th in bullpen ERA. So overall, is this a bottom 5 offense and a middle of the pack pitching staff? I think one of those is a lot more likely to be sustainable than the other. The Royals offense won't be this bad all year. And they're 13-10 despite that, with a really high start from the offense and then a really low point that they're going through. So the only really individual player that we're not going to talk about too much on today's podcast probably is Salvador Perez. He's been on fire.
Who's not going to talk about him?
lineup.
Who's not going to talk about him? That's my guy. What are you
Oh,
doing?
is he one of your spotlight guys?
What are
My
you
bad,
doing
my bad.
right now?
Let's not look
my
at the
bad.
doc before the show,
Yeah,
man.
we're just going to completely cut off Josh's spotlight, by the way. No, but Salvador Perez has been on fire. I'm not going to say too much beyond that because apparently we do, and I skipped over it in the doc. But again, Josh, your point, and it's something that I'm going to cap off as my kind of takeaway at the end, not to spoil the entire thing, but they're being competitive. And in 2022, 2023, even 2021, I texted you guys over the weekend. I had a tweet ready to go that was like the Royals started 14-9 or whatever it was in 2021. They ended 74-88. They're just putting together a different quality of competitiveness now, to where I think that even the people who didn't believe in them before the year should be trending up towards 70 now. The people who thought they'd win 70 should be trending up towards 75, and things are going to change, but the expectations should be a little bit higher than they have been even a month ago. But that's kind of my overarching thought. It's a rough week, but they do have Michael Massey back to segue to transactions. 3 games so far entering today, 2 hits and 11 ABs, nothing to worry about. The thing that I don't want to say it was a controversial decision per se, but Nick Lofton going down. 13 games, he hit 276, just not much power, was doing fine in the field. It's not a Nick Lofton problem, I don't think, at least, Josh. It's more of Michael Massey had the job. Michael Massey earned the job. Nick Lofton isn't getting, the contract or the veteran promise per se of playing time like a couple other guys are. So you can only have room for so many middle infielders.
Yeah, 100%. And it always seemed like a situation where, in the end, I feel like this could be a potential platoon situation down the road. When they brought in Adam Frazier, they wanted a left-handed veteran guy that was good in the clubhouse and knew a lot of the guys that were on the Will Smith recruitment trip. So I think he fell into that pretty seamlessly, while also understanding that it was probably going to be Massey's job, and he'll probably have to fight for playing time at that point. So I think that door is still open, but you're right. I think he did need to definitely be in Omaha to get those everyday at bats, but it is kind of a bummer because he was producing. But I do think that Michael Massey's ceiling and overall value is just as valuable, if not more so, than Nick Lofton. And I'm a Nick Lofton guy, so I think that is saying something personally. But I do like Michael Massey's back. Glad he's healthy. Came in and immediately started producing a little bit, so kind of hit the ground running like you exactly wanted him to. But yeah, it is kind of a lackluster thing considering I'm a big Nick Lofton guy who is also hitting in Omaha since he's gotten back down there. So it is good to see that everybody's still kind of going, and hopefully give this offense a little bit of injection there in the second base.
When Michael Massey, once the lineup came out on Friday, when Michael Massey's first game back, I looked at it when I saw he was in there, he was sitting 7th, and you look above and below, and I was like, that lengthens the lineup significantly. I knew that it probably would, but when you see it all put together, it's like you got theoretically 7-8 dudes that can go bridge on you at any time. And that is a dangerous place to be for pitchers or for opposing pitchers, that you can't take it at bat off against this team until maybe like the 9 hole with Isbell right now. Like, that's just kind of where you're at. Even though Hunter Renfroe has been inconsistent, there's still light tower power in there, and we've seen that a couple of times this year. But it adds an element to the lineup, some legitimate left-handed power at the bottom of the lineup that I think is going to play very nicely. Nick Lofton is going to be a part of this team, I think sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. The only thing with him, as great as the strikeout rate and the walk rate was, he didn't have an extra base hit. He wasn't hitting the ball with much authority. So if there's anything he should work on in Omaha. It's just finding the barrel and finding the exit velocities and getting the ball in the air with some extra base hits. Once he starts doing that, he'll be back. And then you have okay, what's the move beyond that? And I think there's a roster move that feels like it should be pretty obvious whenever that move may come. But I would not be shocked to see Nick Lofton back in some capacity, providing the same sort of positional versatility, veteran type at bats from a rookie. So a lot to like there. This is not an indictment on Nick Lofton, just an unfortunate roster crunch.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the Royals 40 and even the abbreviated active roster is a little bit of, I don't want to call it a flex per se, but a little bit of intrigue throughout there. Jordan Lyles being on the temporary inactive list. It's being described as a personal matter. So there hasn't been any word beyond that. Obviously, everyone on this podcast and everyone who covers, follows, works for the Royals is hoping that everything is okay. With him and his family and everything that he has to attend to. Anthony Veneziano has been optioned back down to AAA Omaha. He has 13 innings pitched, 4.15 ERA in 5 games. He started a couple of them down in AAA. And Tyler Duffy is now taking the Lyles spot in the bullpen. Pitched 1 inning, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts this season. Minor leagues, he had 5 walks to 10 strikeouts. So kind of a feast or famine type guy in the bullpen. So Duffy has been around the block. He knows what he's doing generally. Now, the value proposition might not be too crazy. I think that was a pretty logical move, though. I mean, you're swapping 1 for 1. You could always go with a young guy that you want to see more of, I think, and no one would have batted an eye at that or been upset about it. But Joel, I don't have too many qualms with Duffy coming up. I don't think it's a groundbreaking move. Lyles was kind of suppressed in that bullpen anyway. He wasn't like the backbone of it, but we do hope again that everything with that personal matter is okay.
Yeah, I'd imagine Tyler Duffy is going to be probably in a similar type role that Jordan Lyles would be. I actually kind of liked what I saw from him yesterday. Like the fastball is not overpowering. But it's in the low mid 90s. But the knuckle curve and the slider were really effective, getting a lot of ugly swings out of the strike zone that this bullpen doesn't have a ton of. Like there's some swing and miss stuff, but not a lot. So it just adds a different element. It's a little bit of a different look. And also good for him considering what he went through in spring training to make it back this quickly and to be a part of the big league bullpen. I don't know if it's a long-term move. I don't think it is. But if he can just provide some stability, toward in those middle to late innings, then I think we're in pretty good shape.
Joel, I have some very bad news for you.
Oh boy, are we going to get right to it?
This is the beauty of a live show. Joel, you had some thoughts about the contact play. We had old Adam Frazier led off the inning with a double. And I believe it was Daron Blanco got him over the third, and then the next batter had a soft grounder back to the pitcher, Joel. And Adam Frazier was in a rundown and eventually thrown out.
You've got to be shitting me. I mean,
Just
go ahead, Joel. Go ahead.
It's reckless and unserious. It has not worked one time this entire season. They do it every single time there's a runner on third. It is ridiculous. I don't understand it. And it's always the slowest dudes on the team doing it. It's never Bobby. It's never Dyron. It's never Michael. It's always Adam Frazier, MJ, Hunter Renfroe. It doesn't matter. You're costing yourselves outs. You were in a slump as an offense, and you were costing yourselves outs with runners in scoring position. It is unserious. It is absurd.
Real bad. Seems like it's been a Frazier a lot lately.
I mean, you have got to be kidding me.
He's not helping
That is
himself
just flat
at all.
out ridiculous. He's done it back-to-back nights.
Yeah, back-to-back nights.
With the infield in last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the soft grounder to the pitcher is like even worse than infield play again.
I mean, you've got to be kidding me. Now, I don't know if this is a call from that Q is like, we're going to be as aggressive as possible on the base pass, or this is Vance Wilson telling him on contact we're going, or it's some combination of it. And Adam Frazier has and hey, all these dudes have a green light to go if they think they can make it. And every one of them is wrong. Unless you are Bobby or Dyron Blanco, stop doing it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I went
almost impossible
we went
to
live.
defend.
We went live for the first time and I went full Rant Swanson. Like that was, I haven't lost my shit like that in a long time. My goodness.
When we were putting together everything for the show earlier today, I was like, someone who hasn't watched, the past couple games might not know what we're talking about with the contact play. And that now everybody knows what we're talking about
Prime
with
example.
the contact play.
So
the Royals are just helping us out.
So
Yeah.
It's exactly what it sounds like for maybe those that don't know, like the little inside baseball stuff. That is where there's a runner on third, and most of the time you want to make sure the ball gets through the infield, or you make sure that the infield is playing back, and then you go if they're basically conceding the run. But if the infield's in and you're just going to be aggressive, you're going on any type of contact. You're running no matter what. Crack of the bat, you're going. And the contact play is on, but like, what's the point? Like, it hasn't worked all year, and they're continuing to do it. It's absurd to me. Like, there are high school teams that don't run the contact play as much as the Royals do. And at least in high school, like, there's a much better chance of an error. Like, so you're putting pressure on the defense. These are big leaguers with 990 fielding percentages. Like, it's not going to work. And at a certain point, like, it has to stop, or it has to be pared down significantly, because it has cost the Royals so many times. Now, thankfully, Kyle Isbell comes through. He reached on an error, run scored. Yeah. So
I was gonna say, he didn't do much there.
But you know what? Right now, it could be 2-2 instead of 2-1.
Well, there it is, 2-2 now. Well, maybe 3-2.
There we go, Bobby. Good for him. Awesome.
Right down the line.
Those are the differences between the below average team being an average team, or an average team being an above average team, and above average team actually making the playoffs instead of being like 3 or 4 games. Like, this stuff adds up over the course of a season. When you don't take care of a series you're supposed to, you drop a game because the bullpen does something bad, a manager decision costs you here and there. And like, no one's going to bat 1,000 literally and figuratively with those types of decisions and just in general. But you would think when you're ready to be a contender and win repeatedly and win consistently, those teams don't make those types of mistakes usually. So it's kind of a sign that the Royals they are playing better. They are objectively, and I think anyone could guess they're a better team than they were last season, but still making some youthful mistakes. Adam Frazier does not have the youth excuse on his side for that. The manager really doesn't either. The coaching staff doesn't, but some of those mistakes, maybe I can't even segue that maybe things will change because our injury updates pertain to pitchers. It's not guys on the base paths, but Jake Brentz is beginning a rehab assignment. He hurt his hamstring. He strained it in mid-March. The Royals, Annie Rogers made it seem, and she does great work with her reporting, that it could be like a full 30-day type thing. Like, they're eligible to be on a rehab assignment for pretty much a month, and the Royals will take it slow, possibly use that entire month for him. And then Carlos Hernandez is expected to begin working his way back officially from the shoulder, like just fatigue, soreness type deal that was battling in spring training. So Annie reported on track in his recovery. So Josh, what do you think about Brent's, and then any immediate thoughts on Hernandez as well?
I mean, it's a bum. I'm a big fan of both of those guys. I think both of them can be very effective when they are healthy and when they are commanding the zone as well. They're both very effective, and they can be very useful to this bullpen who lacks a bunch of guys that have stuff. It's a lot of soft contact issues going on in that bullpen. So being able to add 2 guys in Brentz and Carlos Hernandez whenever they're healthy and throwing well would be huge for this bullpen. So I can't wait to see them back. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I really didn't, considering how the Carlos Hernandez stuff was going in spring training, I kind of chalked him up to not seeing him at all this year. Wow. Maybe that was way too, I don't know, rash for me to think that way. But when you talk about arm fatigue, shutting him down for an unknown amount of period, I mean, that's never something you want to be able to count on in the season. So if we get good Carlos Hernandez back at some point this year, that is a big win for this organization. And Jake Prince, I just root for that guy anyways. I would love to see him come back and stay healthy, but he also seems like he's got a long road to go. He was battling command issues in spring training. He's coming off that TJ surgery that shut him down last year. So he's got a long road to come back, and that recovery, Annie said that we're taking it very, very slow, giving him as much time, and that's exactly what's going to need at this point.
I'm very excited to see Carlos Hernandez back and I'm sure you mentioned this at some point, Josh. I was looking at the game and looking at some stats, so I was unfortunately half listening. But Carlos Hernandez adds an element of velocity to the back end of the bullpen that the Royals just don't have right now. Like, who's the hardest thrower in the bullpen right now? Is it MacArthur? And it's like 96. So, yeah, I guess Matt Sauer hit a 7. So I guess you have that. But again, if that's like in today's game, the Royals are working from like a weird bullpen position where you have a bunch of dudes that throw sinkers in the low to mid 90s. So it adds a different element. And I think having that true 101 miles an hour in the back end does, I think, have a significant impact and helps take a little bit of pressure off some of the other guys like a MacArthur or Stratton, a Schreiber, that have used a lot of high leverage innings early in the season. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Carlos Hernandez last year, a little bit of off and on.
It was a mixed bag for sure.
Yeah, it was a mixed bag. 3.83 ERA in the first half, a 7.82 in the second half of the season. But we are going to take a quick break. We're going to be back and dive into some individual players and our spotlights of the week.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
One World Away podcast, Jordan Foote, Josh Keiser, Joel Penfield, Nick Springer behind the scenes producing, doing a fantastic job. Josh, I almost robbed you of talking Salvador Perez on this podcast, and I glossed over a player that is hard to miss. He's just a big polarizing figure, and he's hitting the cover off the ball. So without further ado, thoughts on Salvador Perez, not only this past week, but overall this season.
That guy's pretty good, and that's all I got. No, I mean, enough. He is good. They talked about on the broadcast that he is one of 4 players this year that is batting over 300 on both fastballs and breaking balls, which is crazy town.
That's crazy.
That is bonkers, especially Salvador Perez. Like, what is happening? He is defying age in every aspect of the game. He's actually getting better at just about everything he's doing. This guy, he's not a kid anymore. This guy, El Capitan, 7.8% walk rate. His career high going into this game is 4.4. That is not a Salvador Perez thing. It is insane that he's drawing walks at this point. He has like 7 walks, not that much, but it was like 3 weeks later last year before he got his 7th walk. So that's where we are with Salvador Perez's walk rate. To go on top of that, a 14.4% K rate. Also very crazy. A 341 batting average. He hasn't had that since 2020. His defensive metrics are only going up. Somehow he's learning how to do defense better than he was prior to this in 10 years or whatever. He has the 5th highest F4 in the American League. He's an MVP candidate at that point. This is not sustainable at all, but it's a whole hell of a lot of fun. So Salvador, keep carrying this offense. You are the man.
It is truly incredible what he's doing.
Incredible.
Right, like at 34 years old, 13th year in the big leagues. And he seems to be, he seems to find the fountain of youth. Like, and maybe this is just an early season thing. We'll see. But it seems like they're more willing to take some pressure off of him catching behind the plate with letting Freddie Fermin catch him multiple times a week, which is a good sign that they're going to try and keep him healthy. I mean, shoot, the guy's almost 1 dot in it right now. OPS. Mm-hmm. He had 19 walks all of last year. He has 7 now. Like, I know that like that is super low relative to some hitters, but the fact that he's still chasing the same amount that he has pretty much his entire career, and the strikeout rate is super low.
Yeah.
and he plays. His first base he's actually pretty solid at first base. I wasn't expecting that, but like he deserves so much credit for the defense. Like that has been the knock on him for years now, that he is not that good behind the plate at receiving, blocking, any of it. Like he just has not been very good at it for better part of a half decade. And he's completely turned that around. Paul Hoover deserves a ton of credit for that.
Yes.
But for a guy like Salvi, yes, he absolutely deserves. But I think Salvi deserves a lot of that credit too, because again, 13 years in the show, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do because it's what's gotten me here. But he made a concerted effort to get better this offseason. He's talked about that. I know I think Annie's mentioned that as well, that he wanted to improve. He knew he needed to be better behind the plate, receiving and blocking and throwing runners out. And he's done all of that this year. So to me, the defense is almost more impressive than the absurd offensive numbers he's put up so far this year.
Yeah, no, I 1,000% agree with you. Not to be a wet blanket at all, but about 11 months ago, we had a similar conversation, I think, about his offense, because from May 2nd to May 23rd, he walked 6% of the time and had a 157 WRC plus and hit 297 and was dotting the OPS. So we were talking. I can pull the clip.
You don't get to do this, Jordan.
Two thoughts off of that, though. So getting the bad out of the way first and foremost. Health is a very big deal for him. Yeah. He's always banged up, battling something, but when he is as close to 100% as possible, he's a goddamn good player. Secondly, the defense, we didn't have that conversation last year. It was not a massive improvement. Correct. It was not a noticeable improvement. So even if the offense does fade and he's just a good or solid offensive piece for the Royals and gives them the power they need, if you couple that with the defense, then he's all the way back. And he's literally prime Salvador Perez because of the defensive value. The metrics are going to love him. The casuals are going to love him still because he's still behind the plate, playing for the Royals, gunning people out, always had a good arm, always had a good pop time behind the plate. Like, he is going to be a new version. And we'll talk about Freddie Fermin, or I guess I'll talk about Freddie Fermin here in a little bit. The Royals catcher rotation gets a little interesting. Like, how much do you push the envelope with him? Do you want to keep him behind the plate more? Do you want to move him to first base? How often do you give him a day off? When do you DH him instead of catching? When do you put him at first? Like, he's playing well, and the injury that everyone was a little bit alarmed with at first is now behind him, and he's picked up right where he left off.
I actually looked into the splits as a catcher, and I think he's catching 71% of the time of the games he's playing, and last year was 78% of the time. So he is getting a little bit more rest, so there might be something to that. But yeah, I had to look at that too.
So this is just interesting. I hadn't checked it all this year, but so Fangraphs War has hated Salvi forever because the defense has been so poor. But the defense is good this year. He is worth 1.3 wins this year so far, and that's in 22 games. Last year he was negative 0.3. 2022, when he played 114 games, he was worth 0.8. The year that he hit 48 home runs, he was worth 2.7. So he's already pacing like, and he's pacing
like a seven WAR player, right?
Yeah, like if the defense stays at this level and the offense is probably around a 120, 130 WRC plus by the end of the year, that's probably a 3.5 win player, 3.5, 4 wins.
Helps in the Hall of Fame debate.
Yeah, and
I'm just saying, if he put together a couple of those.
And to do that at age 34 is what's so crazy about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's been insane. A much younger guy that has a lot of work to do in order to improve. But we did touch on him earlier in the podcast, is Matt Sauer. Josh, a lot of people probably don't know too much about him, myself included, just because he's been the Rule 5 pick, relatively new to the team. What did you find? What do you think about Matt Sauer?
Yeah, I was definitely in that boat too. People were asking me, and I was like, I honestly can't really tell you. And it's largely because he's only come in mop-up duty, which that's probably how it should be. You know, the Rule 5 guy, want to keep him on the roster and kind of keep him developing while he's in the major leagues and contributing. It makes sense that he's only pitching low leverage situations. To the tune of a 2.16 ERA, looks pretty good. A 5.94 FIP does not look good. Usually a 5 is considered really bad. So he's almost 6 with his FIP this year. I haven't largely been blown away by any of his stuff that I've seen so far. He's not striking out many guys. He is walking way too many guys. So I just haven't come away super impressed with him. I do think that he's got a 5-pitch mix. I believe it's a 4-seam curve, slider, sinker, and he does throw a splitter, one of the only splitters in the organization, which is intriguing. That is one of the new hot in the street pitches that people are starting to get on the bandwagon for. So I think that he does leave a little bit desired as far as the stuff goes. I'd like to see more vertical break on his sinker and his slider. Both of them are pretty flat relatively between those two pitches. So I would like to see a little bit more there. And he's been leaving his curveball up in the zone quite a bit. So I think he's missing a spot there, which is always, to be expected when you're a kid, never touched anything below AA coming into the season. All of a sudden seeing major league hitters and trying to get them out at the same time, regardless of it. So the low leverage part of it isn't a great assessment sample size. It is kind of when everybody's kind of potentially going through the motions, trying to get out of there. But, hopefully they can continue to stash him, but we'll have to see how that goes. I don't know. The bullpen's not necessarily a strength that has a lot of options that can carry that dead weight at that point, but we'll see how it goes.
I was going to say
where it gets interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
100%.
So because he was a Rule 5 pick, if it gets to a point where they decide this just isn't working, you're off the roster, we're going to like when Carlos Hernandez is ready. If they don't think Matt Sauer is viable, he doesn't go to Omaha. He goes back to the Yankees because he has to stay on the big league roster for the full season for him basically be locked into the roster. That's how they kept Brad Keller for all those years.
Or they can make a trade for him too. That's the other option.
So that's where it gets tricky. Is this isn't just to stash him back in Omaha and hope that he can figure it out there. He completely leaves the organization. So it depends on how much they really value him as a long-term piece, and which is wild to think about a guy that hadn't pitched above AA pitching in the big leagues now. Now he's used in super low leverage innings, but that's where it gets tricky for the Royals if they decide to move on from him. He's not here anymore.
Josh, do you think there is a world where the Royals decide to stretch him back out as a starting candidate, or do you think he's like a bullpen lifer or victim of a circumstance because that's just where he's at now? What do you think about the likelihood of that?
I think if he makes it all the way through the season on the roster, I think they absolutely start to stretch him out next year. Send him probably back down to Omaha now that they could, and then start to really develop on what he could sustain and develop that way, and then probably stretch him out to see what's there. But I mean, that rotation is pretty much already set for 2025, I think, depending on something major happening. So I don't know if there's any room for him to even be in the rotation in 25, at least in opening day. But I think that they would rather him be a starter. I think that's usually what you take those high picks in the Rule 5Rs for the upside. So I think that they would still try to pursue that until it cannot be pursued anymore.
Joel, I am sorry. I'm selfish. This is out of order, kind of, but I want to keep it on pitching. Can you go with your pitcher before your batter? Because I really want to know what the hell's going on here. I really want to know. I really want to know.
So I'll be honest. I don't have a ton of stats to talk about with this. That's is very narrative driven and
don't need one.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
My spotlight is Will Smith, and I really didn't want to do this. But we've talked about a lot of different pitchers, and we really haven't talked about him a ton other than in passing. Listen, guys, we
were hoping it would turn around and we wouldn't have to talk about it the way we've been talking about it.
And I credit to the Royals in this regard. I think we talked about this last week. The Royals in the past, when they've signed free agents like Will Smith, veterans that have been there, done that, a winning, won at high levels, 3 World Series rings in 3 years for the guy, that it's okay, they are our closer, and we're going to keep throwing them out there because we're paying them to be that. And then 5 games into the season, that cannot happen anymore. And then now we're going to move you to lower leverage innings, but still 7th, 8th inning. And that didn't work. Okay, we're going to put you in mop up duty because and it was okay. the lowest of low leverage situations possible. They sent him out there against Baltimore on Friday night. And it goes single, 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 gives up a couple, gets a couple outs, and then the grand slam to Adley Rutschman. And a 6-0 game becomes 6-4 against one of the best teams in baseball just that fast.
That have already walked you off twice.
And it's a, oh crap, here we go again.
Yep.
Now, thankfully, they found a way to get a couple more runs. You get through that game, it's whatever. Like it didn't matter at that point. After that, on the bottom half of that inning, I don't know how you keep putting Will Smith in games. Like, the only way that I think you can is the Jordan Lyles victory formation. We're up 9-1. But even then,
They have like
don't
5
know
guys in that role.
I don't know if I can trust him even there.
Yeah.
Like, the fastball is down 2.5 miles an hour from last year. Like, the slider is still good, but unless you're Sergio Romo, you're not going to throw your slider over and over and over and over again. It's just not going to work. It hasn't mattered what role they put him in this year. It's just simply not working. And it stinks because they signed him, and then we heard all of these things about how he talked to Chris Stratton and all these other guys like, hey, come to Kansas City. We really can build something. I believe in what they're doing here. So we wanted it to work so bad. And it sucks that it's not. But if the Royals want to be competitive this year, if this was last year and we knew they were going to be bad from jump, I probably wouldn't be having this point. I wouldn't be talking about this because it's just whatever. We're going to, they're losing 5 games a week anyways. What does it matter? Just let them pitch. If the Royals want to be competitive and they want to be serious about it, I don't know where you put him in this bullpen at this point. Like, and I hate saying that 20 games in, but I just don't see the path to success for him on the mound right now.
So I agree with everything you just said. I just wanted to provide a perspective. So during the offseason, the Royals had a handful, or maybe it was like 3, but still more than the average team, I would say, considering like the player option stuff for next year. And it was really for the 2 starting guys that they brought in. But
yeah,
Will Smith's on a 1-year, $5 million deal. Now he does have a $125,000 incentive for appearances that kicks in at 25, and then is every 5 appearances after that. Look, man, if he keeps pitching the way he is, I don't think he's going to hit too many of those incentives. So he's not going to get the full $1 million there. The Royals can afford to move on after this year. It's not one of those situations where they are locked in long term. And really,
honestly, like,
it's also not too much to where I was going to say that. Yeah, it's not too much to where you're like, oh, well, we paid, $12 million for this guy that was supposed to be really good. We're going to ride out the whole season with him. They don't have to. Should they? I don't know yet. I'm not ready to fully declare that he's all the way over the hill, but it's looking bad because second half of last season, he wasn't very good either. Like, we should have maybe seen the writing on the wall for him. I just didn't look into the numbers enough to notice. I saw the overall stuff. I was like, oh, he had a decent season. He's okay still. Not knowing pretty darn good the first half, and then down the stretch really faded. So it does suck for Will Smith, and sometimes that just happens. Signings don't work out, and props to the Royals for making relatively swift decisions, I think, with moving him around and kind of minimizing the impact, but it just hasn't worked out so far at all.
And they can afford to, and it's kind of the same situation as the Tyler Duffy thing. Like, you want to get the experienced guys in there to kind of set the culture, kind of start rubbing off on the guys that you want them to rub off on. And if they're working out, great. If they're not, hey, you got Walter Pennington and Sam Long that are absolutely shoving down in Omaha. So there are cheap options that you can then commit to for a 40-man roster spot and bring them up to see what they got on a major league level. And if they don't, then option them and see what's going on there, and then bring up the Steven Cruz or whoever the flavor of the week is at that point. So I think it is a veteran thing, a leadership thing, a cultural thing that they're wanting to kind of see through. As long as it wouldn't surprise me if there's some kind of IL stint to keep him in the clubhouse and keep him coaching guys up. But that also might not be a thing. So it is kind of a tough, dissension from what we see as Will Smith is. But everybody made the joke when they signed him, their Royals were World Series bound when they signed him. So do you keep him on the roster as the lucky rabbit's foot?
I mean,
Even if it is a 60-day IL guy?
yeah,
Yeah,
mean,
I don't
I
know.
don't know, man. It's so tricky.
Does it still have an effect when he's on the IL?
I don't think so. Maybe. I'm not sure the Royals are going to have that. I don't want to say problem luxury this year, but
Luxury, yeah.
they are in the playoff hunt, so can't rule them out.
Mhm.
Who else do you have, Joel?
So I'm going to talk about Dyron Blanco as my hitter spotlight because I think he's a guy that deserves some shine. Not because he has this grand impact in the lineup every single day like a Bobby Wood Jr. or a Salvador Perez, but it is the perfect example of a guy that thrives in his role. And
Yep.
his role is be really fast and be ready to go at a moment's notice. There are not many dudes that are ready that can handle that. And then, hey, every once in a while, we need you to go out and play defense in the 7th inning or like the last couple of nights. Hop in the lineup, dude, because we need your bat right now. And I mean, he's a weapon. He's an absolute weapon for this team. And it's in a role where he may get 70 plate appearances this year, something like that. I don't even know if he'll get that many, but he might have 30 stolen bases because when he gets on first, the entire stadium knows he's running to second. And how often has it mattered? I think once. I think he got caught,
Once.
but he's 5 of 6, and he's stolen a lot of them with ease. But the few times that they've put him out there to hit, the walk rate and the strikeout rate 14.3% each. You handle that as a fifth option. Sweet spot rate 77.8%. So that means he's hitting the barrel pretty consistently. The average exit velocity is 93.4, which I would imagine is in the upper 90th percentile or so. The expected slugging is 763. Now, this is in a super, super, super small sample. So it's not even qualified on Savant, but you can still see there's a lot of red on it, like on his Savant page. So he's doing all of those things in a super limited role. And he's not a guy we're going to talk about a ton this year, but I just wanted to bring it up because you need guys like that on your roster that, look, man, you may get one at bat a week. You may get, on a good week, you may get 5. But we need you to be ready to go in the 7th inning when we got the go-ahead run on first, and we need you in scoring position. And he's ready to go do it, and he does it. So he deserves credit for being able to be in that role, accepting it, and thriving in it, where not a lot of guys would.
When I saw you were going to spotlight Dyron Blanco, I was excited to ask you guys this question, and you nailed it even without me talking about it. Is Dyron Blanco is a weapon? Is Nelson Velasquez a weapon? Is Hunter Renfroe a weapon?
I don't think Renfroe
Velasquez is a weapon in a different way.
Yes,
he
correct.
lacks. They complement each other. Like if you had an outfield with both of them doing what they do best, like then it would make sense. But yes, different ways. Renfroe is not a weapon. He's just there, and I think he gets a little too much hate. But he's not.
I agree with that point. Yeah, but no, I think
is he a weapon?
No,
absolutely not.
I rest my case.
Blanco. The only comment I have on him is great for the Royals, but if mid-season, he makes perfect sense for a contending team that needs like a 4th or 5th outfielder that just wants one guy to add to the team to put them over the top. And that's probably exaggerating a little bit. I don't think adding a Blanco is going to put you over the top necessarily, but he can help round out whatever you need. And every team could use some depth. Maybe some guy gets hurt. He's a good pinch runner. He's a good backup defensive outfielder. He just keeps producing at the plate, regardless of how much or how little he's going to play. So there's kind of the Paulo Orlando vibes of like this guy just keeps sticking around and making plays. But there's some substance to it. Like he's been pretty good, and I think that he is a good player for Kansas City, and he'd be a good player to have on the team for just about anybody.
Agreed. What do you got, Jordan?
Kind of the same type of vibe of last year. This guy keeps producing. He's a little bit older. He's a backup. He's not going to overtake anyone for a starting job. Freddie Fermin has not had a good year. 12 games, 38 plate appearances. He's batting 194. I found a few problems that alarmed me at least a little bit, but I also think probably will be corrected over time. Defensively, he's still good. The blocks above average is good. The framing is fine. Like he's still a decent backup defensive catcher, but one extra base hit all year. He hasn't barreled a ball in those 38 plate appearances. The hard hit rate's down like 15% from last year. So the power outage is real, or just the solid contact outage is real. And I think it might be like a timing issue. The launch angle is way, way, way up this year. He's hitting an infield fly ball 36% of the time. The fly ball rate is up big time. The line drive rate's down. He's just getting under the ball a shit ton and popping balls up. I don't know what is going on there in terms of his timing or what mechanically he needs to change. So I think Freddie Fermin really had a rough September, if I recall correctly, last season, and kind of faded into the sunset throughout the last part of the year. He's picked up there. I don't know what he needs to do, but I think he'll figure it out because some of this stuff just isn't very sustainable. I don't think that unless he's a complete mess that he's going to keep this up, but I am cautiously watching like, hey, he's doing some uncharacteristic stuff. I don't know if he's pressing. I don't know what the timing issue is. I'm not a certified coach to help him correct that, but I do think that some of this can be turned around.
Shout out to Chance Winchester, by the way. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Yes,
yeah, thanks, Chance.
So my thoughts on Freddie Fermin are just as long as he's good defensively, I don't really care what he does offensively. Like he's a backup catcher for a reason. Now, Salvador Perez goes down for whatever reason. I might want to dip into AAA and go get Logan Porter, who currently has a 236 weighted runs created plus in AAA this year.
I can give you his
if you want
his average exit velo in just a second too.
So he's hitting the crap out of the ball and he's not striking out a ton. If you want to go and try and get like an offensive guy, which you probably would need if that were the case, then I think that's where you go. But if Freddie Fermin is your guy that plays, again, like he's out there once, maybe twice a week, substitutes into a game late in the season for whatever, for defensive purposes, that's fine by me. Like I'm not too worried about a 30 weighted runs created plus my backup catcher.
Yeah.
That's probably about league average.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what it probably is.
And
it'll improve. He'll be fine.
I totally might deep dive backup catcher weighted runs created plus just to see
Please
where
do.
he's at, because if he's at 30 and he's like got the fifth highest, I'm not going to worry about it. Right?
Yeah. A lot of those guys you want for defensive metrics, but talking about Logan Porter. Logan Porter's got a 16.5% chase rate, an average exit velocity of 95.4, real solid. Max exit velocity is 106.3, 7.4 swinging strike rate, and a 1354 OPS. That was, I think, going into last week, so I haven't quite caught up. But yeah, Logan Porter is healthy down there as a potential option to come back up and try to make up for some of that lost offensive salary goes down. But let's not talk about things that won't happen.
Yep. My other player is Nick Anderson, who has pitched 9 times this season, or at least 9 innings. Allowed 4 runs, 5 walks to 3 strikeouts. Hasn't allowed a run the last 5 times he's come out there. He's not fooling anybody this year at all. First percentile in whiff rate, strikeout rate, 30th or worse in multiple expected stats. The chase rate is bad. The strikeout rate's down 18% from last year. The walk rate's almost double what it was last year. You can take your pick of how many batters is he leaving on base. It's really high. What's his FIP? It's higher than it should be. What's the BABIP? It's pretty low. Everything suggests that he's going to hit a wall at some point. The first pitch strike percentage is way down. He's serving up meatballs on Savant. They have that specific stat. That's way up.
Yep.
He's making things a lot harder on himself and somehow shimmying his way out in the past 5 appearances. If I were to bet on one Royal to just Will Smith himself basically right now, it'd be Nick Anderson. And I dove into the arsenal. I can't really find one specific thing to point at and be like, this is what this guy, it's kind of an amalgamation of things. The curveball, using it the same amount he was last year, but the whiff rate's not even half of what it was last season. It's getting a little bit less movement than last year. It was already well below average in terms of movement anyway. That curveball just doesn't move much at all. The fastball is flatter. The velo's down 0.5 mile per hour. The put away stuff is down. So the fastball curveball combo isn't really functioning as it did a season ago. And then the sinker that he's been going to a little bit more that has worked. He hasn't allowed a single hit on it in 16 pitches, combined 4 inches more of vertical movement this year. So he's taken some movement off of the bread and butter offerings and then added a little bit to the sinker and begin using it. I think he's just got to lean into that more. Maybe you go to the curveball 45% of the time, you go to the fastball, let's say 35, and then you go to the sinker 20%, and you just do that. Something's got to give because the fastball's not good enough anymore. The curveball is going through some things that he's going to have to improve. But Nick Anderson, this is also a guy that's 33, 34 years old and struggles to stay healthy. Like I was intrigued by the signing, and I think the upside with him is pretty significant. But man, it's peripherally and literally not looking too good, Joel, for him right this moment.
Yeah, and I guess the good thing for him and the Royals is they don't need him to go with high leverage innings. They don't need him in the 8th, 9th inning. I'd have a lot more concern if that was the case. This is, hey, the game is within a couple of runs either way. Just get us to the 8th or get us to the 7th. Like, so from that perspective, I'm not as concerned. I understand, and I think what your point is well taken, that the stuff is not fantastic and he's kind of dancing out of danger. But as long as he can keep dancing out of danger until somebody else gets healthy,
sure,
then I think we're fine. So I don't have a ton of major concerns considering the role that they're using him in. If he was in John Schreiber's role, I'd be waving red flags and all the alarms all over the place. I don't think we're there.
Nah, not at all. Josh, any final thoughts on Anderson?
No, he's still cheap, has one more year of control. That's about it. Vinny Pasquantino just missed a 3-run jack by probably 3 feet. Went foul down the right field pole. So
that's how the past week is gone for the Royals. They're going to try to right the ship. They're obviously playing right now against Toronto as we're doing this live. They have 2 more games against the Blue Jays. Then they have a 3-game set against the Tigers. And then they're back against the Toronto Blue Jays. So let's do some bets. My favorite part of, I think this is my favorite segment. It's turned into it, not because I'm good. I'm 1-2, but our primary leadoff guy here, Josh, you bet that the Royals would have over 7.5 stolen bases before the next recording. That did not happen, but explain yourself and what you're going for this time.
Yeah, I mean, they stole 2 bases last week, and I think that is largely because they just weren't on base to do it. I think that is a tough road. But we're getting back on the horse here, but we're going to use our powers of being bad at this stuff for the good of the Royals. We're going to ride a double jinx here, and I'm going to say the Royals are not going to win more than 2.5 games. I'm putting the line between now and the next time we record. They have 7 games. I'm going to say take the under on 2.5 wins in that time. They have a really tough slate of pitchers coming up. You mentioned, I mean, the rotation in Detroit is very, very good. We won't even see Kenta Maeda, who stinks this year because he's on my fantasy team. We're going to miss him. That's how this works. But Skubal is a Cy Young contender. He's very, he's at that level, and the other 3 in that rotation that we will see is very, very good. Blue Jays, Yariel Rodriguez is kind of like, we'll see him twice. I think those are the 2 best opportunities to it because their bullpen stinks. It's the worst in the league in the ERA. So I think those are the opportunities they need to seize, but they're going to see Barrios twice. They're going to see Reese Olson, Gossman tonight, Casey Mize, Schoolboy, like I said. So I'm taking the under 2.5 games in hopes that they prove me wrong and we ride this jinx the right way to go. Oh, and 5 of 7 games are on the road too. That also is part of it.
Yeah,
I'm going to hit you quickly. Our friend Chance drops a question since we're talking about bets. Who you guys think will be called up first? Walter Pennington, who we have talked about on this channel a little bit before, and then Will Klein, who we've talked about a shit ton on this channel. I'll give it to you, Josh, first, and then we can transfer to Joel's bet and his thought.
I think it depends on what happens with Will Smith, because if they do have some kind of IL stint, it's going to be Pennington. Klein is very, very good. Pennington has been lights out, so that's who my money would go to.
I'm going to go with Will Klein just because he's already on the 40. It would require a 40-man move for Walter Pennington to come up. So that's where I think Klein might be the easier option there.
And so Sam Long. Sam
Yeah.
Rungen's also in there too.
Same sort of concept. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I haven't won one of these things yet. These bets look like my bets on the big league season. In real life, I was in a Chris Davis like slump of 0 for a billion until yesterday when I finally hit one for the first time all year. I have the Royals going over 0.5 times running the contact play and it failing.
Today does not count. Nope.
I know today
Nope.
doesn't. Listen,
Nope.
I know today doesn't count, but I know that shit's gonna happen again. So
we might as well consider that a win for you. Congrats on your first win of the year.
I had to take the lowest of low hanging fruit.
Oh man.
And that was the insert rant here. So I'm glad we got it out. I'm glad we got it early.
If it doesn't happen, since you did write this up before we started recording, I'll probably give it to you. But I hope for your sake that they just do it one more time, just for you, one more time. Then they learn their lesson. But
I hope they run it and it works. That's what I want to happen. I want to see happen.
That would be hilarious.
Like all the reasons.
Piggybacking on learning lessons here, I don't know what got me after this, but Cole Reagan's career with the Royals after allowing 3 or more earned runs, how he's followed it up, and he hasn't done a lot. Like, he's obviously had a bunch of good games where the sample size here is small. The first time he followed it up, 6 innings, 9 strikeouts. The second time he followed it up, 6 innings, 11 strikeouts. The third time he followed it up, 6 innings, 2 earned, 5 strikeouts. The last time was the end of the season. This year he followed it up, 6 innings, 8 strikeouts. So I think Cole Reagan's is going to go over 6.5. I think he's in for a big bounce back outing. That would be on Wednesday, correct, Joshua? Or no, Thursday, right?
Oh,
the 25th. Yeah, on Thursday. I think Cole Reagan's is going to bounce back in a pretty big way. I don't think he's going to absolutely shout hashtag like ace material, but I think he's going to have a good game and it's going to get him back on track after very easily the worst performance that I can remember of his time with the Royals so far.
And I lost, by the way, on your line because he always gets above 6.5. Almost all, like 80% of the time, going back to when he's the starter last year, he's over 6.5 Ks. So I'm gonna call shenanigans on this bunk line that you've laid.
I'll go above 7.5. Then I'll say he has 8.
Okay, I like 8. Yeah, I think 8 feels like if he goes at least 6 innings, he's getting 8.
Okay, all right. Let's go 8. I'll just go 7.5 on hit the over. That's what we're going to change it to because I don't like that 6.5.
I flopped on Alec Marsh, by the way. I said under 5.1 innings pitched, and he had 5.2. So not only did he go over, like he barely went over. So I had it right. I just picked the wrong side of that bet.
Yep.
Let's talk minor leagues. We've rambled a lot about the big league club. Josh was nice enough to give us an update on all the minor leagues. He took care of the doc, which was very kind of him. Omaha lost their series to Nashville 2-4. Andrew Hoffman's on the 7-day IL now. Tucker Bradley was released, which is something that we all missed at the beginning. And then I combed through and looked back at the transaction log. I was like, hold on a second, Tucker Bradley. I couldn't find anything. Couldn't find a tweet. Couldn't find an article. No clue. So not sure if that was like an error or he's going to be back soon or he's never coming back. I wish I could give you more on that, but I have not confirmed anything on Tucker Bradley at all. So, Josh, do you have a standout player that's not Tucker Bradley?
Yes. One of the hot in the street names now that Kyle Isbell has been struggling this last week is Drew Waters, who is actually swinging a very good bat in Omaha. This week, he went 4 of 12 with a home run and a double, 4 walks to 1 strikeout this week, which is always fun. But his OPS over the last 2 weeks was a 11-10. So 958 on the year. He does seem like he is doing what he normally does in Omaha. So it does make sense why a lot of people are clamoring for him to come be the center fielder for the Kansas City Royals instead of Kyle Isbell. So shout out to Drew Waters. He did have that weird disciplinary thing that happened last week. He got pulled in the middle of the game. We thought it was going to be a promotion, but it turned out to be some kind of managerial decision. So he was back in the lineup not the next day, but the day after that, which he did hit a RBI double. Was it a double or home run? I don't know. He had a good game in that one as well. So it is shout out to Drew Waters. Let's just go there.
Joel?
I'm going to go with Will Clyde. I mentioned him a little bit earlier. He had 4 strikeouts in 3 innings this past week. On the year, 10 strikeouts, 6 walks in 10 innings. He has gone multiple innings a couple of times. I find that to be a little bit noteworthy. Maybe he can kind of be a multi-inning guy for the Royals coming up here pretty soon. I'd hope to see him in the big leagues at some point here. Again, similar to Carlos Hernandez when I talked about him earlier, that the Royals need velocity in their bullpen, and Will Clyde can absolutely provide that, upper 9s, triple digits if they need it.
Logan Porter. Josh already hit a lot of the numbers for him. He carried an 8-game hitting streak into Tuesday where he had a 282 WRC plus and was batting almost 500. He has all his options left. He turns 29 in mid-July. He's been back behind the plate more this year, not really splitting time over at first base or anything. So good organizational depth. I think he's done all he can do at the minor league level now, at least to start this season. So, you can slap him with the quad A label if you want to. I just think he deserves props instead of slander for doing what the hell he's done so far. Don't know what it means long-term for him. Again, the age is a factor too, but props to Logan Porter for literally hitting the cover off the ball and doing some good stuff so far.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
AA Northwest Arkansas 4-2 won their series against Midland. Ryland Kaufman was transferred from the 7-day injured list to the 60-day injured list, which is not great. That's the only transaction that was notable that they had. I'm going to go and snake my interesting players here, standout players. Noah Cameron, who's the number 20 prospect on the MLB pipeline list. He has a 1.84 ERA in 3 starts this season. He started 1 game since the last time we talked. 5 innings, 7 hits, 1 earned, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. I dove into the numbers just a little bit. The only interesting thing I found, he hasn't allowed a home run this year after 14 of them last year. He's limiting the long ball, and he's throwing the same low 60s percentage of strikes. Like, it's not like he's filling up the zone more. He's not doing anything particularly crazy that I've noticed. He's just pitching better and getting out of the jams he's supposed to and limiting the long ball, and it's made a big difference. So Noah Cameron long-term, flashing some of the upside that intrigued the Royals when they brought him in. So props to him for doing a damn good job.
My guy is Luwinder Avila. Now, he had 2 starts last week, both against Midland. The first outing did not go well at all. Didn't make it out of the second inning. Gave up 5 runs. Only struck out 3, walked 2. Second time around, went 4 innings. Did not allow a run. Struck out 5, walked 3. So 11 strikeouts, 6 walks on the year. I understand that's not spectacular, but when you watch him pitch, you're like, you don't have to squint much to see a good future big league pitcher in there. And he's only 22 years old. The delivery is super athletic and fluid. The fastball has really good carry to it. It's still low 90s. He can touch a mid 90 every once in a while. A good breaking ball off of it, a good feel for spin with it. So it's I'm not saying he's gonna make it to the big leagues next year. But I think in 2026, I think you can look at Luwinder Avila at 24 years old and go, that's a guy I could see at the back end of a big league rotation. Like it kind of goes beyond the numbers a little bit. And it is kind of just watching the way that he pitches, the way he handles himself on the mound. I think he is a good pitcher that I'm pretty bullish on.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I'm gonna keep it back in that same rotation there in Northwest Arkansas. Go with the Royals' number 5 prospect in the MLB pipeline rankings of Mason Barnett, one of the higher ranked pitching prospects in the system that is apparently full of pitching prospects all of a sudden. They have a very good success rate here so far in the young minor league season. But this last week he went 5 innings pitched in 1 start, 1 earned run, 2 hits, 1 walk, 1 hit by a pitch, and 10 strikeouts. That is some dominant stuff from Mason Barnett. He's off to a great start this year as a 27.1 K minus walk rate. So he is doing work in Northwest Arkansas. Should see him in Omaha at some point this year, I would think. So can't wait to see how his stuff plays up. So keep an eye on Mason Barnett there in Northwest Arkansas.
Mason Barnett cooking their asses. Speaking of cooking their asses, High A Quad Cities 5-1 won their series over Peoria. Spencer Nivens to the 7-day IL is the only notable transaction. Joel Penfield, who's your standout player from Quad Cities?
I'm just going to keep with the pitching theme And I'm going to talk about Ben Kudrna, who shoved against Peoria earlier last week. 8 strikeouts, 1 walk in 5 innings, no runs. No runs given up in his last 2 starts. ERA on the season is 1.23, 19 strikeouts in 14 2/3 innings. He looks the part. I mean, the stuff at high A right now is almost too good. I think he needs a bump up in skill level and challenge. He should go to Northwest Arkansas sooner rather than later. I would imagine mid-May he'll end up there. I think he is that good. I have thought very highly of him since the Royals drafted him. He looks more polished. He looks more comfortable. He's throwing all of his pitches with conviction right now, and you can see that confidence permeating. He's a dude to watch.
Yep.
I know the old adage of there's no such thing as a pitching prospect, but if there is a young guy in this system to dream on as a starter, he's one of them.
He is certainly one of them. I love that. Let's stick with that same draft class and Carter Jensen. I'm going to talk about Carter Jensen again because I just can't get enough Carter Jensen. This last week, he slashed 316, 435, 526, 1 home run, 1 double, 4 singles, 3 for 3 on stolen base attempts, 3 walks, and 3 strikeouts. The eye is elite. I cannot get enough of Carter Jensen's eye, but he's actually hitting with power this year. I love it. It's a lot more pull sideline drives to the swing, so I think he's taken a breakout step forward that way as well. Still under 21 years old. Should absolutely be in Northwest Arkansas soon. He's spending half his games at DH and half his games behind the plate, so he is getting work in both scenarios. But I just love Carter Jensen so much, and I told you guys earlier this week that I think that there's a world that we live in that Carter Jensen is a top 100 candidate for the prospect list by midseason. So I love Carter Jensen, KC native kid. I can't get enough of him. I need more of him. Give me some Northwest Arkansas Carter Jensen, please.
A guy that I think is going to get a lot more attention if he keeps up what he's doing is Hunter Owen, the 22 prospect on Pipeline's list. 2023 4th-round pick. He didn't pitch last year in the Royals system because of some durability, injury issues. This year he's come out with a vengeance and came out with a bang, man. 3 games, 2 starts, 2.25 ERA, 13 strikeouts. He's only walked 1. He had 5 strikeouts to 1 walk in his most recent start, went 5 innings. He has the fastball, curve, slider, change combo. Like, he has a multitude of pitches he goes to. College prospects, a little bit more experience. Like, I think he's going to be elevated. You can make a case for really a lot of guys to keep moving back up. And then, of course, the Frank Mazzucato conversation as well. The Royals have pitchers in the system that I think you fast forward. We're recording April 23rd. You look at May 23rd, someone's going to be on the move. I don't know which one it's going to be, if it's going to be more than one, but Quad Cities and really the either of the A affiliates are looking good. And also Columbia, 3-2 beat Charleston. Mauricio Velez to the 7-day IL. I'm just going to knock my player out real quick. I've got Eric Torres, who isn't ranked on the Pipeline list. He was I believe the DSL player of the year for last season. With the Royals, he looked good there and in the complex. He wasn't he wasn't striking out a ton. He was walking quite a bit. Picked up with that this year, 15% walk rate, 8% strikeout rate in 12 games. Kind of boosted by a really hot start. He's cooled off just a little bit, but he doesn't have a single extra base hit. All of his hits have been singles, 52% ground ball rate. He has a measly 3.6 swinging strike rate, though. So he does a lot of stuff that's like, man, this is a really advanced guy at the plate, and he's making great decisions, but also he's giving them literally nothing in the realm of power. But I still think that because he's finding a way to succeed anyway, that I want to tip my cap to him for this week and keep it at that.
Yeah, I think the guy that we haven't talked much about, he has kind of gone under the radar period, but having a really solid season is Felix Arande. Also part of that pitching rotation, 20 years old. He's an international free agent signing out of Cuba from 2021. So far in the year, with 14 innings pitched, 1 earned run so far in the year and 12 Ks. Last week was a 5 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 walk, and 4 Ks. he's an accurate pitcher, it seems like, and he's got good size, 6'3", 180. His fastball can get up to 94, but usually sits around 92, 93 right now. But I think that could fill out a little bit more and get a little bit more velo. His change is really, really good. He needs to work on some breaking balls to kind of complement those. But so far, Felix Arande is having a pretty good start to the season there in Columbia.
Joel, you're muted, buddy. I love that thought, though.
Sorry, I'm 4 for I'm 4 for 4 going with pitchers on my standouts, and I'm going to talk about Ethan Bosacker. Bosacker, I hardly know her.
Can we kick? How do I kick Joel from the call? I'll be working on that. Go ahead.
So he was the 13th round pick out of Xavier this past year in the 2022 draft or 2023 draft. And so far in Columbia, 3 starts. He has a .56 ERA. He pitched today, 5 shutout innings, 4 strikeouts. A guy that is kind of a relative unknown to some degree because he was a later round pick. A college guy that had been there for 3-4 years. But, seems like he's got a high floor. And I'll be curious how fast he moves for that reason. It's pretty clear to me that the stuff is too good for low A. So I imagine he'll be in Quad Cities pretty soon. And that'll be it'll give a better picture of how good Ethan Bosacker is and where he fits into the system.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Josh, I think we're just going to keep it. Josh had a segment. This has been a thought every week for the past year, literally. We called it Pump the Brakes. Are we sticking with that, or are we doing the Have a Drink, or what are we officially calling this?
I think we stick with Pump the Brakes for now.
I like Pump the Brakes. It's basically a segment where we have it's a made up quote or complete narrative, but it's stuff we've seen. So the quote itself might not be real, but the argument and the narrative and the suggestions and the Twitter reactions have been real. Basically let's calm down a little bit. Let's pump the brakes. Let's not slam them. Let's not brake check anyone, but let's slow down, decelerate, find a lane that we're comfortable in, instead of going 100 miles an hour or instead of impeding progress. So I will kick it to Josh. I think it's only fair, and then Joel will go, and then I'll round us out here. Josh, what's your thing you think people need to pump the brakes on, including myself, because I might have suggested this last week to a lesser degree.
I'm piggybacking off of my AAA spotlight and Drew Waters. People are clamoring, if you will, for getting him in here instead of Kyle Isbell, but he's not doing anything. I said he's doing the same thing that he did in Omaha, or what he's done the past 2.5 seasons in Omaha. So there's no real reason to believe that he is going to be something that he hasn't already been, which has been a average or just slightly below average hitter. His MLB career WRC plus 92, which is more than Kyle Isbell. His defense is somewhere around average. Kyle Isbell is living in defender land. So at what point is the offense so stagnant that we have to bring Waters in here and sacrifice the defense of Kyle Isbell, which, by the way, the Royals outfield defensive metrics are one of the worst in the Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
The only thing going well is Kyle Isbell in center. And so if you're taking him out of center to replace him and get some offense from Drew Waters, I get the argument, but it's just something we don't need to necessarily have to harshly react to it, because I think this offense will be able to find its level a little bit more, progress to the mean to where they are expected to be, and we can still suffice with Kyle Isbell's quote unquote void at the 9 spot. I think we'll still be fine. So I'm not so quick to say Drew Waters needs to come up and be that guy, but I understand the argument for it. We just might need to pump the brakes on that just a little bit.
Yep. Joel?
So I'll try and be quick on mine. I know people have started to kind of turn the corner on Frank Mazzucato. He had a really good start this past week, 8 strikeouts, looked the part. Here's the concern. He's still throwing 88 miles an hour, and that's just not going to work in the big leagues. He has all the stuff to be really good, but he really needs that fastball velocity to take an increase. You can have the best curveball in the world, but if you're throwing 88 miles an hour, even with the induced vertical break that he creates, it's just not enough. He has to get into the low 90s at a minimum to be viable. And I just want to make this point. This is a very, it might be unfair, but I'll leave it. It just provides a little context to where Frank Mazzucato is compared to his fellow draft class and the rest of the guys in the first round. So Frank Mozzicato was taken 7th in the 2021 draft. There were 29 picks in the first round, and that is just the standard first round, not the comp round or anything like that. Just the first 29 picks in the first round. 26 of them have at least made it to AA or higher. There are 3 guys that have not. Frank Mozzicato, Will Bednar, who's coming off of Tommy John surgery and will report to high A. I found that. And Maddox Bruns, who was in high A last year but has not debuted in the 2024 season in either AA or high A with the Dodgers. You look around the rest of that draft class, everyone else is progressing at a normal rate or even higher, with multiple guys drafted in the top 10 to 15 that are in the big leagues right now. I'm not saying that Frank Mozzicato is going to spend the whole year in high A, but it's just something to look at when you think about where he is compared to the rest of the draft class. And I know development is not linear, but it's interesting. It is interesting and not in a fun way.
Not in a fun way, yeah.
I've got just pump the brakes in general, man. The Royals, and I talked to you guys about this before the show, I believe, right before we jumped on. I had a radio thing Monday. Maybe I mentioned it at the top of the show. Either way, it was an hour ago. The Royals from April 12th until Monday, 23rd in starting pitcher ERA, 14th in bullpen ERA. That's a middle of the pack, roughly, pitching staff. Bottom 5 offense, with Bobby Witt Jr. in a little bit of a slump, Michael Garcia and MJ Melendez combining for a batting average of less than 100. Over that span, 5 qualified hitters with a WRC plus well below 70. They are not going to be that bad. And you could easily look at the Sunday 2-1 loss to the Mets, where Chris Stratton gave up 2 runs in the 8th as a win. If one thing goes right, the Wednesday no offense game against the White Sox, the 9-7 loss to the Orioles, where Reagans got absolutely shelled. The Royals are still being mostly competitive. It's too bleeping early to say, oh, the Royals can get back to what they were earlier in the season, which is a clear-cut contender, or, oh, the Royals are doomed, they're going to lose 90 games. It's too early to say that. We don't know what the Royals are. If they would have started the year and then flipped into this, it'd be the same type of deal. We don't know which version of the Royals is legitimate. Things still have to stabilize. We've talked about that 40-game point. I think that's going to be a big episode for us. Josh kind of mentioned that in terms of what is and isn't sustainable, what's real, what needs to improve legitimately, what's a fluke, all of that. Let's pump the brakes. Let's have a drink. You guys can have a drink with us. Actually, on Sunday at the KCSN post-draft spring tailgate. Join us for a celebration of KC Sports. It's on Sunday at Holiday Distillery. Beautiful spot out in Weston, Missouri. Going to be plenty of stuff. Holiday Distillery, Smoke and Magic. There's going to be a Bloody Mary bar. There's going to be prizes, drinks, food. Craig Stout, Nick Springer, Josh Keiser, Joel Penfield. I haven't mentioned myself because that might deter some people from going, but I guess I'll be there.
That's why I'm
I
going.
believe Joshua Briscoe is going to be out there, a bunch of fun. KCSN personalities, friends of the programs, friends of us, friends of you. Please come join us. You can RSVP. I believe there's a link down in the description. If not, I can always tweet that out. The KCSN account has it. Josh and Joel have retweeted it and tweeted it at some point. So with that said, I hope to see you all there. Very grateful for you tuning in. And while Nick puts up this end screen here, I want Josh to say something funny or Joel to say something funny because I don't have anything at all.
My
The White Sox
fried. Cheers, you guys.
White Sox just lost in the bottom of the 9th. Or wait, no, they got a tied home run in the bottom of the 9th. Sorry.